Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is kushalmehra. I've not been able to cover books for a long, long time on the podcast. I used to do two, three actually every month, but since I've been writing my own book, I've taken a break from reading for other things. But we're going to cover this book. I really enjoyed this. This is one of the two books that Abbas has recently released. So today we're going to talk about the book that has come with blue one ink, not with Penguin, which was Babar Part 2. Babar baad mein karenge. So this is Hitler, the proclaimed messiah of the Palestinian cause. Abbas, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you, Kushal bhai. It's indeed a pleasure to again be back on your show and to discuss a book.
सो यार मेरे को एक बात बता, आई इट्स गोइंग टू बी अ वेरी वियर्ड पॉडकास्ट. मुझे है ना बुक के मेन मटेरियल में कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं, मुझे एक अपेंडिक्स में इंटरेस्ट है. मुझे है ना एक अपेंडिक्स में बहुत इंटरेस्ट है. उसमें अपेंडिसीज में है ना, दिस इज आई वांट टू फोकस ऑन दैट. दिस इज अपेंडिक्स 6, ग्रैंड मुफ्ती मीटिंग विद हिटलर. मैं आज उस पर फोकस करने वाला हूं. मेरे को वो बहुत, because there is a lot of controversy about that bit, and to be very honest, that bit, right, if you ask me, is a centrifugal thing of your entire book. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are absolutely right, Kushal bhai. And see, it so had happened that Netanyahu had made a statement in 2015
Hmm.
that perhaps a Palestinian not perhaps is what I'm using, but he had made a claim very strong that it was a Palestinian who had pushed for the Holocaust or the central final solution, as they call it. So it was very important to put on record that what happened between Hitler and Grand Mufti, whether it is that very meeting that led to the final solution or it was something else. Generally, people get carried away that it was in this meeting only where he said that final solution karte hain and let's go ahead with it. But this was not it. He was in constant touch with Eichmann. He was in constant touch with Himmler. He was in constant touch with many other big Nazi leaders, many big one apart from Hitler. Hitler is like the top boss. You don't discuss the plans with the top boss all the time. He is there. Like if some plans is cooking up, say, in for that matter, let's pick up Russia. It's not necessary that the meeting is happening directly with the Putin. It may happen with a lot of subordinates, and then you don't know that what happened in the back doors because not everything is again put on the record. But yes, this was a very essential theme for my book to pick because अ- अक्सर यही सुनते आए हम कि हिंदुत्व was influenced by fascism and all those kind of things. uh, it has been part and parcel of the discourse for very long. And it was just one tweet of Imran Khan which made me. I'm a skeptic. So first, I wanted to see that whether there was a link with the Hindutva or not. And when I began to uncover the documents, diametrically opposite thing came out. Like they were blaming Hindutva, but here was something which just blew me away.
Now, see, how do we establish the connection of what? So, I'll get into why you got interested in this subject, why you chose to write this book, and all a little bit. But like, what is the main aim here when we are talking about someone being influenced by X or Y or Z ideology, right? Like, आप यदि point A से point B को connect कर रहे हैं, so what is the cumulative evidence? It can't be just one meeting, minutes of the meeting, right? So what is the other corroborating evidence?
So there are two very strong statements made by two Nazis, and it's an affidavit which came out during the trials, and it was recorded. And in those affidavits, we can come to know that Grand Mufti of Jerusalem has been said to be very close to each and every Nazi leaders, and he's constantly in touch with them when the plan for the final solution is cooking up. Now, I am not going with the idea that he was the one who did everything. It cannot be the case because this was a big step, some giant step, and it cannot happen just with somebody comes and says that, and people will choose to do. ऐसा नहीं होता है. Of course, Eichmann was involved, Himmler was involved, and there were many other top Nazi leaders who were involved. And now, in the affidavits which came out later on, and those affidavits speak strongly about Grand Mufti of Jerusalem being one of the man who is responsible for the planning of the final solution. They don't talk about Holocaust because obviously that word was not in the parlance. It was the final solution which they were talking about. So it does not appear in that meeting with the Hitler. In the Hitler's meeting, you can just see that Hitler is in all of admiration for the Grand Mufti, and Grand Mufti is buttering Hitler as much as he can. That's what it looks like. Hitler has admiration for Grand Mufti, but not as much as Mufti has for Hitler. Right? He is more like buttering Hitler to get his things done, and Hitler just gives him an assurance that yes, things will be taken care of. We will think about your independence. Your independence movement will also be taken in consideration, but not much was spoken in that meeting. But apart from that, if you go to, I think it is the Appendix 1 or Appendix 2, if I'm not wrong, probably it is Appendix 1 only, where the first affidavit appears there. So this I'll just tell you that what is that affidavit as well.
बता वो बहुत important है because until you don't share that affidavit, this honestly, this is why I'm starting in such an absurd way is because मेरे को बहुत खुजली हो रही थी उसके बारे में, इसके लिए मैं बोला मैं सबसे पहले ये क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा, बाकी सब बाद में करेंगे.
So this is Andres Stener's affidavit about Dieter Valenci's. He made some comments, and these are the Nazis. And when you go to the appendix 1 of it, you will find that I have provided. So it was very tough to get the archival document is not very readable. I just could get a Xerox of it and it's pasted. So maybe that German is not very legit. But I also was able to get the hold of the English translation, and this English translation was done long back in 1946 itself, based on that affidavit. So that affidavit makes it very clear that, and it's a notarized document, and it is said the following person appeared before me, Dr. Vladimir Pivko, notary public in Vasia at the place and the on the day. So this is talking about the notary, where the notary has happened, like about the affidavit. Then there is a declaration that who that person is about. I, the undersigned, Ing Arch Andres Tenner, resident in the Tat Kransha Lomnica, engaged in talks in the year 1943 to 44 with the German consultant for Jewish affairs at Slovak government, and his name is Dieter Valency, member of the German legation in Bratislava. I did so at the behest and as a member of the Jewish working group in Bratislava, whose chosen task was to represent Jewish interest and which was also in regular contact with the function with the component of the Jewish authorities in Switzerland and Palestine and group Gizi Fleischmann. So he is talking about Dieter Walensky's comment, which he had come across because he's the one who is dealing with the Jewish affairs, and Dieter Walensky is the person who is also responsible for the Jewish affairs, but in a negative way. And then he goes on to explain that I will read that part also where he's talking about the Grand Mufti. Valency informed me, referring to a consultation he had with Eichmann, that a Palestine as a destination of possible immigration was of the question, or at least would not be formally indicated. When I asked about the reason for this, he asked me with a laugh whether I did or not get the heard of the Grand Mufti by the name of Husseini. He stated that Mufti was in very close contact and cooperation with Eichmann. Eichmann is the main guy who is dealing with the final solution. And for that reason, to avoid being repudiated for the eyes of the Mufti, the final destination of Palestine could not be accepted by German authority. And in this very affidavit, further he goes on to explain that in this further talk, Valency provided additional details about cooperation between Eichmann and Mufti. He stated that Mufti was an implacable arch enemy of the Jews and had been long been a champion of extermination of the Jews. He said that Mufti also constantly pursued this idea in his talks with Eichmann, who was in known a German born in Palestine. He said that Mufti was also one of the initiators of the systematic extermination of the European Jews by the Germans, and that in the implementation of this plan, the Mufti had been a constant associate and advisor of Eichmann and Himmler. So this is one of the three affidavits. So this is the affidavit which appears in appendix. But there are two more affidavits which I have partially quoted while I'm talking about this case, that perhaps it's Grand Mufti of Jerusalem who ignited the fire of the final solution, or if not ignited, he was certainly a man who was part of it. And it got my interest, Kushal, because see, everyone was tried for the as a war criminal. The Nazis were tried, but Mufti somehow could escape it. He was never tried, and there were a lot of tall Palestinian leaders, so the Free Palestine movement leaders, who could never be tried. So now, see, when the case comes today that something is happening in Gaza, the things go wrong, there's a humanitarian crisis, we all feel bad for it being a human beings. We always feel bad of it. It's not that we don't feel bad about it.
No, I just want to put it on record. I've always been a consistent supporter of the government of India stand on the Israel-Palestine issue.
Yes,
I've
I
actually
know.
I've said
Yes,
it multiple times on my own podcast. I don't and it doesn't please my Israeli friends who, and they know I'm very pro-Israel. But my stand on the Israel-Palestine issue is whatever the government of India says. I've been
yes,
very consistent on that.
yes,
But the
and
truth has to come out. It
yes.
doesn't matter who gets hurt in the process.
Yes, and what is very interesting that Israel was always pro to the two-state solution. Also, it's not that Israel was not, but it was constantly being rejected by the Palestinian leadership. It was only when the 90s, when early 2000s, when Yasser Arafat got a bit pacifist, and perhaps he was getting older, and there were many other political reasons why he chose that. Okay, maybe that two-state solution is a thing, but largely, if you see that Palestinian leadership was always against the two-state solution, right from beginning, they were never pro to it. And as far as the Indian state policy is concerned, I do agree that it is very good policy in a way that they have agreed to the two-state solution. But I would say that somehow in the initial days, it was a bit too pacifist, because it was not even ready to accept Israel as a nation. Formally, in a very serious manner, it recognized it only in 1990s. Though in 1952, one small partial recognition had happened.
No,
Though
that's
Israel,
that on the Modi government front, the Modi government has clearly tilted towards Israel. There is no
yes,
problem in it.
yes,
Admitting
yes,
that, yes,
yes, yes,
and in my opinion, yes, the Modi government's tilt towards Israel is right.
yes,
But the tilt towards Israel is not going to be how an average Israeli would expect it to be.
yes. It will be about our national interest at the end of a day, and it's not non-alignment, but the point is that we are very pro-India. We are not. We are only aligning towards
And
India,
on
and
the
that's the policy.
Israel-Palestine conflict, the Modi government is very pro-Israel. It is very
Yes, it is.
obvious.
It's a very
It is very
pro-Israel.
obvious. Is it not like, see, we are objective analysts of Indian government policy. What? It's not like we want one or the other. It's like we are just stating what
Yes,
the governments are stating, right?
yes, yes. So apart from that, there are two more affidavits which I have part quoted as the chapter goes. In fact, it appears in the prologue itself, because I think prologue is also long, because I was writing it when almost whole the book was done, and I just wanted to give a very thorough introduction to the people, that even if you don't read the book, even if you read the prologue, at least you get that what we are up against, or rather, if I put it this way, that what are the kind of civilizations or the world which exist around us, right? And the most evil man of that era, Hitler, if you look him that way, one of the most evil man, he chose to side with the cause. Of course, he had his own reasons, he had his own political ambitions, but he saw a lot in the theology too. He had a lot of compassion for the theology which came to the Islam, and that made him pro-Islamist. Islamists
Yeah, yeah.
really,
We'll come to that later.
yes,
But see, I'll explain why I started so abruptly with this appendix. Because the meat of your book is actually about this appendix and the corroborating documents around this appendix. If we don't talk about these appendices, people will not even understand what we are talking about in the book. That's the
yes,
problem.
yes, yes. And
So,
so that's why I choose to place it verbatim, as far as this one of the affidavit is concerned. I have put the record of the Grand Mufti meeting with the Hitler too, where he gives the assurance, and the meeting is very cozy. And what's very interesting is that when the talks about my book has been going on, and the point has been made that perhaps it gives some idea that Grand Mufti was behind the final solution or the Holocaust, or whatever name we may like to take it. Uh, then people become furious. They just quote the meeting, but see, meeting what this meeting between Hitler and Mufti does is it gives you the idea of the chemistry both of them held for each other. That is what meeting makes it very clear. And then it also gives you a sign that yes, this man was very much into the Nazi affairs. He was very much into it. And what's very interesting is that when Germany was going quite bad in the World War in 1944 onwards, when the things were not going, they were going south for them. It was not too good, and German Air Force was getting reluctant to bomb Tel Aviv. But it's Grand Mufti who's constantly pushing the Germans, the Nazis, that hey, you have to bomb Tel Aviv. So even Nazis were outshined by this man, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, because it was not about the survival, it was not about the war battle, it was very ideological and religious battle. But Grand Mufti had picked up, it was very personal. When I say personal, it I mean to relate it with religion. It was very religious, while for Nazis it became a bit pragmatic later on, that we are not going to bomb Tel Aviv right now because of the war based situation. It's not going to happen, Mufti, please shut up. He was told twice, but he was still constantly pushing that you have to bomb Tel Aviv, you have to bomb. So it happened. And it's all in the record. It's not that something which is just coming out of any WhatsApp forward or anything as such.
Now let's go into this. So, how much time did it take for you to research this book? And where the hell did you ये फटे में कहाँ से आ गए तुम? ये मतलब okay, I understand you are studying Persian for Babar ये सब. ये Hitler Nazism ये कहाँ से आ गया? ये why did you get into this?
So I must give credit to Imran Khan for this. Had it not,
मैं इमरान खान घबराना नहीं है क्यों?
so it is Imran Khan's one post on Twitter, or rather tweet back then. He did some tweet about that how BJP is a Hindu nationalist fascist government, and that piqued my attention. And I began to study primarily about that. What were the political affiliations of the Nazis? Who were cruising around with them? Who saw them as good leader and the role models? And there are only few cases where you will find that here and there say, because Nazism was not even well known to the Indian world back then. Indians knew nothing about it. So that's the reason why even Gandhiji wrote a letter calling Hitler the great friend or something. He had addressed Hitler as a friend too, and he was asking him to end the war. Right. So even Nazism's menace was not known to the world back then. But just saying one or two word about the Nazis, that they are good or bad or what really elevating something to the level of a god, something to the level of the prophet is just another thing. Indians never did it. Now people will bring the example of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. They do, right? And I was facing this opposition at times that even Netaji did it. But Netaji called out the racist policies of Hitler like anything. He did not spare it. He wrote about it too, and in fact, he took the chin with the chin up and called out the Hitler that you can't call our Indian independence movement as a movement of a week or something like that. So he did not compromise on national interest, and at the same time, he was not there to see Hitler as a godly figure, which the Palestinians, the Arabs were doing back then. Now, when these documents began to come up, I thought that, what the hell, where I have got into, because I had no interest whatsoever to dabbled around World War II. And of course, the World War interests a lot of people. I have my own interest in that era to understand it, how geopolitics, because a lot of things changed because of two world wars. But I never intended, and I'm going to come up with a book around that era. And but when these documents came up, I saw that. there are few works which have happened in the past by German scholars. There are some work done by Americans, but they have also kept it very concise. Either they have focused entirely on Islam and the connection with the Nazis, or they have not gone into detail with how the during the war a lot of things were happening. And no Indian had touched upon this topic. So I thought that it's very important to really look at what Islamofascism means. Now, I have now begun to look at Islamism as Islamofascism because it was the fascism which gave a new edge to the Islamism. It just became a bit too brutal and dangerous because in Islamism, you will not try to elevate somebody as a prophet after the Prophet Muhammad. But here they went out of the way to even call out Hitler as a prophet. So I thought that perhaps for the Indian public and Indian citizens at least, there should be a manual, there should be a book where they can talk about the Gori alliance or the fling which happened in the around World War II, one of the darkest one, which people don't talk at all about, and they will just get into rhetoric when the questions are raised about whether Hindutva is connected with the fascism or not. Uh, we are not having any academic discussion, and I still say that my book is very academic. It is not something which has been written to draw the sensation. I have gone into detail of everything as much as possible, and it took me 5 years almost to get around with this book. It was a tough ask to get the documents also because a lot of documents were in German, so I had to take help of my friends who were studying in Germany now or now who are working, the architects, etc. So they were always of my help, and they could, because one thing is good that we can get this archival documents at much ease by paying the money, and of course money. We I had to pay money to get the documents, etc. But at least I got it. It's not so tough. It's quite tough to get a lot of documents in India from the archive. There are a lot of documents which are very much classified here in India too. We can't get a lot of documents
भाई
here. That,
तू मेरे को ये बोल रहा है 1927 का लाहौर का कोर्ट केस डॉक्यूमेंट रंगीला रसूल का मेरे को पूछ, मेरे को नहीं मिल रहा है। मैं 6 महीने से ट्राई कर रहा हूं, मेरे को उसके संक्षेप मिलते हैं, मेरे को नहीं मिल रहा है वो डॉक्यूमेंट,
is
नहीं
it
मिल
for
रहा
your
है,
blasphemy book?
नहीं मिल रहा है।
Yes,
मैं
I agree. It's very tough. So, but it's,
मैं
we
छह
can
महीने
get
से ट्राई कर रहा हूँ। वो तो किधर नहीं है ना, वो भारत में होगा ना,
yes,
नहीं मिलता।
yes. But it was easy for me to get the documents. We can get in touch with the archival department. It's all available through the online. You can write them, and the documents you can get it. And that's the reason why my bibliography is too long because most of it is archival document with the archive number, kahan se uthaya, kahan kya karke, and that's the reason why I choose to make them as an online material. Now, if one picks my book in the below the contents, there is a section where it may be visible here. I'll show it. This perhaps it's visible. So
Yeah,
here
the
one
QR code is very much visible.
yes. So here if one so all the bibliography notes and important definition about Islamofascism etc. have been put as an online material. But even bibliography were more than thousand in number because they were not books. They were archival documents. So that's why the list kept increasing because each and every archival documents is unique in itself because each and every one has got a unique serial number in terms of where you have taken from, what folio it is. So, uh, but these 5 years were quite fruitful. When I look at the book today, I feel quite satisfied. I'm quite happy that something substantial has come out. And at least for quite a long time, people have got a good manual to know about that what is there in the Free Palestine movement, what is a where the genesis lies and where they should stand about it, right? And today people fall for a lot of propagandas too, whether and this has always been there right from beginning. If one reads my book, they will see that how the Arab world was trying to still cozy around with the Western world, try to even they were trying to cozy the British also in the initial days. It's only later on when uh, the World War began, they became anti-British. Otherwise, they were not very anti-British in the initial days because British also promised them the Arab state initially, because the British came with a Jewish state concept much later. But before that, they said that it will be Arab state. It was only the from 1917, the Balfour Declaration, when the things began to change.
So how does one look at it in this entire thing? So there are many important aspects in this book. One is the
Yes,
origin of the word Palestine itself.
yes,
What is the geography of that word? Where was that Palestine supposed to be? Now, when you talk to many Jewish folks, unme bhi koi agreement nahi hai, to be very honest. It
yes,
depends on the shades of how hardline the Jew is. I'm just
yes,
being very honest. You meet a
yes,
lefty progressive Jew, unko to lagta hai sara kuch hi Palestine ko de do.
yes, yes, yes,
um, then you meet a left of center Jew, there would be like two state solution.
yes,
You meet a right wing Jew, वो बोलेंगे नहीं जेरूसलम हमारा और वो कुछ करो. एंड यू मीट अ फार राइट Jew, नहीं कुछ भी नहीं होना चाहिए, सब कुछ उड़ा दो. मैं
yes,
तुमको बोल रहा हूँ, there is no one standard answer, right?
yes,
So and this is me talking to so many people on this issue. Like, I just want to make it very clear, I don't like the idea of innocent children dying in Palestine. I have, again, I'm very consistent on this issue. I reached out to Palestinians to come on my podcast and talk to them. Before the conflict started, Shadi Amid had come on my podcast. Okay, I actually let him have the Palestinian perspective. I asked him questions. After October 7th, I invited Shadi Hamid again. He did not
hmm,
even reply. मेरी गलती नहीं है भाई. मैं अभी भी बुला के उसको बोलूंगा पूरा पैलेस्टीनियन पर्सपेक्टिव डाल, मेरे को तो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. आई वुड एक्चुअली लेट अ पैलेस्टीनियन कम, मगर अभी वो आते नहीं है तो मेरी गलती नहीं है. अभी मेरी
yes,
गलती नहीं है अगर वो आते नहीं है तो. So, but the point is that there is no standard Jewish perspective also. It's not like the Jews agree on what the boundaries are, right? Because
yes.
somebody uses some historical point of view, somebody uses a theological point of view, somebody uses modern day political point of view. So what was your angle in this entire thing?
So I give a whole history of the timeline of the word Palestine because there have been two kind of views here, larger two kind of views. One says that there was no Palestine. One says there was no Israel, and both of them are wrong because Israel also existed and the term Palestine also existed. Of course, as in Palestine is a term as in how the Greeks saw it, and it originated from a word called Palestina. It was a Latin word Palestina, and Herodotus talks about it in the fifth century BCE. Now, as far the word is concerned, I am very sure that the word Palestine existed for the Western world. It was always related with the Palestine. That's how they looked at it. But in the all the local connotation, it was always Israel which existed as the word. Even the oldest inscription, which comes from around 11th century BCE, that is after a war. There also the mention of the Israel do happen. In the Old Testament, it's always Israel. So the local perspective has always been about the Israel. And what is very interesting that even the synonymous or the closest meaning of the word Palestine also comes to the people of Israel. That's what it means, and which is quite obvious because see, it is first the Judaism which came as a religion. There's no doubt about it. Followed with the Christianity, and then came the Islam. So it's very obvious that even if the land which was being called as a Palestine by the Westerners back then, there also the Jews were the people who were residing. Later on came the Christians, and the local people obviously were the Jews because. And when we look at the history, it's around 1200 BC when it gets a form of a organized religion where where the Yahweh has become the god, and it's a process where it's first Yahwehism because Yahweh is all one of the many gods. They also have many gods initially. Yahweh is the primary god. It's become like a monoism, and then it goes to monotheism where there is no god but the Yahweh, and after that comes the Christianity.
So sorry to come in here. For that, you'll have to also remind people that the first proto monotheism is Zoroastrianism. So,
Yes,
from
yes,
Zoroastrianism, you have these influences, and this is a very mainstream scholarly belief. I'm not making things up. You can read proto monotheism and Zoroastrianism and how it had influence. I just wanted to back you up. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, yes, and that's very true. And Zoroastrianism gave the role model for how the monotheism will work, and it is indeed proto monotheism. And then came the Judaism, and it's in the land of Canaan, the same reason where the Israel Palestine exists today. So the larger point here was what was really peeving me is, see, India is a land where I come from. Both of us come from a land where the Hindus, Muslims, everybody live together. We have seen that nation is not defined by a religion per se that way, or it's not about ethnicity as it has been for the French or the other nation states. It is much more different for us. It has always been. So we always see that even if it say that is the Jews were the people who were living in the land, still the Muslims can live. There is no harm in it. I'm talking of an Indian perspective because that's how we have been living all together. But the problem was that the Islam came up with a strong theological differences with the Judaism, and it got a few verses which were so anti-Jew, like the final judgment won't come until unless the Jews are annihilated. Like those verses do appear. Now, the problem happens that the Islamists have been taking it as a hardcore fact. You have to live by it, and that's the reason why even in the Palestine, when the national anthem was created, the Fidai, it has much to do with the concept of self-sacrificing for the cause of fighting for the Deen or Islam. So it became like that. If the idea would have been softened a bit, if idea would have been like not getting into the matter of the violence all the time, perhaps the life in the Palestine would have been much more simpler. Even the politicians, like the leaders of the Hamas, or say earlier the PLO, or the Yasser Arafat's era in the early days, etc., they always saw people as a sacrificial lamb. They were always seen as somebody who can be used as a human shields. So the idea of the state or the land or whatever the reason which has been existing, it is always about that if you wake up today, it's not necessary that you will see the sunrise again tomorrow, because you may have to go to a battle and sacrifice yourself for the cause of Allah. And this has been embedded in the mind, like it echoes in the national anthem. While our, like if you pick the national anthem of India, it's so much about praising the motherland, and you east west north south you talk about it. You pick national anthem of any other country, but here it's becomes a bit too violent. So the psyche of the political Palestine is very much to incite the local, use the theology, use it as much as possible to have them against the Jewish state, which is the land of the Israel. And that's why the problem exists. Had that not been the case, I don't see that we see such a problem in India or anywhere else, because Israel Palestine is seriously a very unique problem. It's not a very relatable problem for from any other land.
See, what I've personally struggled with, what I loved about your book is, look, you clearly don't come from a Jewish perspective or a Palestinian perspective. You just come at it from a perspective of someone who's like, भाई ये लोग झगड़ क्यों रहे हैं? It's like that. ये लोग झगड़ क्यों रहे हैं? Like, why are they fighting and what are they fighting about? Listen, these people are living there right now. They will have to, just like, you can't change your neighbors. Like, I always tell these, like, am I a national security hawk on Pakistan? Yes, but I have to live with the reality that Pakistan is a thing now. I have to live with that reality. No matter how much I want to deny it, I have to live with that reality. I know that. At the same time, Israel and Gaza living by each other is a reality. Now, I don't think both sides want a two-state solution. I mean, you read the Hamas charter, and I think you have added quite. I think you have added the whole thing in the appendix. Is that the charter, right? That's the
Yes,
charter, right? You have
that's
added,
a
yeah.
charter. That's a
Yeah,
charter.
that's a charter. वो जो 35, 36, 37 points जितने
Yes,
भी हैं.
yes,
Like there is no scope for a Jew in that charter. Like where does a Jew go? If you read that entire, I think it's the second or third appendix. I don't remember which one it is,
yes, yes,
where you share the entire Hamas charter.
Yes.
There is no scope. And
Yes.
another trope that I always struggled with is like, अरे ये तो यूरोपियंस हैं जो उधर आ गए इसराइल में, ये थोड़ी ना उनका लैंड। अरे भाई, वो लोग को उधर से पहले निकाला, फिर वो लोग
Yes.
गए, उनकी एक मेमोरी थी, इसके लिए वो लोग वापस उधर आए।
Yes. That's so true. And
It's
in
like,
fact,
how ridiculous is this claim यार? मतलब you're
yes.
denying Jews their own motherland now. Like, ऐसे तो इतने भी तो बदजात ना बनो ना यार, इतनी बदजातगी। मतलब, are you denying the existence of Judaism as a religion also now?
Yes.
इतनी बेशर्मी।
Yes. And in fact, the phrase which comes from the river to sea, if we look at the roots of it, it is about. So it's not about the freedom. It's about the Palestine will be free from river to sea. It, without the Jews. That's criteria there, and they are very sorted at it. And why Hamas locked the horns with Yasser Arafat fraction? It was because the two state was being initiated and this idea was going well, and the larger picture for the Palestinians was, and I say the Palestinians back then was, and still it is, that they don't believe in two-state solution because they strongly believe in the theology. That's what I feel. I have not interacted much with Palestinians, but what I got from the how the things happen, because not everybody can be ready to become the human shields at so much ease. Hamas was brought into the power by the Palestinians too when the elections did happen, and they surely had this belief that the two-state solution cannot happen. This whole land belongs to them. Jerusalem is seen as a very important part for the Islam too, and the Dome of Rock exists there. Al-Aqsa Mosque is there, and that's the place from where Prophet Muhammad brought the five prayers. So they see it as a very important place, and they have no compromise at it. And this concretized worldview is only doing the problems, because if you see the Jews were the when the first Russian Revolution failed and the Jews are being persecuted, they head towards the places to America in the mass. They go to America. They and they always saw Palestine as a place which was always the promised land. This is what the theology says, and they always want. And interestingly, Zionism was started by non-religious people. It was not started by hardcore religious rabbis or the Jews. It was started by the people who just wanted a state for themselves where they will not be persecuted, because they were constantly watching it where they were, wherever they are. The first, like if we go in the era of the before Christ, the Assyrians did do persecute them. The Romans do persecute them. When the Romans, the Christians come into the picture, they persecute them. It continues even in Ottomans. Though we say that it was hunky dory, but it was not. They had to pay the jizya. They were the dhimmis. It was not. So to be a dhimmi is not easy. You are to wear a different kind of clothes. You will be humiliated constantly. You can't build your new synagogues, and you just can't practice your faith as you were supposed to do. So just living does not mean that you are living happily enough. It's not hunky dory. It's not all where everyone is not doing kung fire there. So it was not easy for sure, and it continued to happen the way as it was. It never stopped. And once the Jews began to come back, they saw that it's a problem because it had a theological barrier, and at the same time, it also so far they stood with the point that they are the dhimmis, they are the second class people. Now they are coming in the modern world where there is no concept of dhimmis, etc. So how are you going to deal with it? So before Hitler could even rise to power in 1919, the riots happened where the Jews were called the dogs on the street and whatnot. So in 1919, they are saying that Jews are like the dogs and we are their masters. So it's actually unimaginable if Palestine agrees to a two-state solution. It's does not look like doable. It's perpetual. That yeah.
I genuinely believe there is literally no solution to this matter. I've had discussions with um, so many discussions on this, and I'm like the like, how the hell does one find a solution in this matter? Because listen, to say that, the lives being lost in Gaza don't matter is a ridiculous claim.
Yes.
It's absolutely inhuman to say something as insensitive as that. At least I'm never going to say. Like, every time I hear the news, even if I assume a bit of it is propaganda, but that I don't buy the claim from the Israelis that everything is propaganda also. By
Yes, not everything,
No,
of
it
course.
is not. there
Yes.
there is a human cost involved in Gaza. Like, how can you, like, कल को भाई इंडिया और पाकिस्तान भी अगर वॉर कर रहे होंगे, I don't want India to attack civilian areas. Why would anyone want that? And the tragedy is Pakistan is so inhuman, they always attack civilian areas.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like,
And
imagine the thought of Asim Munir going to the United States of America and saying, हम आधे वर्ल्ड को न्यूक कर देंगे. भाई, आधे वर्ल्ड को न्यूक कर रहा है मतलब तू आधी ह्यूमैनिटी को मार रहा है. मतलब, it doesn't occur to them. The morality is absent. The absolute lack of morality. I can't even think of a thought कि मैं मार दूंगा सारे नु, मैं मार देना सारे नु. They don't even flinch before they, like, Asim Munir says that he means he's going to wipe out what, 4 billion people. That's what Asim Munir says. 4 billion people includes children. और ये लोग खड़े होते हैं गजा के लिए. ये लोग, मैं सारे नु मार देना है. So, the problem is, like, obviously I can't have that morality of Asim Munir. And that's where I struggle with this entire Israel Palestine conflict. I genuinely struggle.
yes. And trust me, that though I am very pro-Israel, after having written this book, I have even become more. But the point is that if something happens in Gaza, it's not that I don't get hurt. I don't feel bad about it because it's a very human side that you will feel bad about it, and if you are not feeling that there's something wrong, irrespective of whether. So there's a layers to it. I understand that there may be propaganda, but the first thing is that your heart gets broken, and even if they are being used as a human shield, which they are many of the time, that also is a heartbreaking case. I understand that Hamas is responsible for it. There may be, but politics apart, everything, the problem is happening, and the solution. I don't know where the solution lies because see what had happened that when 1948 war happened between the Israel and the Arab nations. So there were a lot of Arabs in the region who sided with the Arab soldiers who were infiltrating and attacking. They went against Israel. So Israel took a call to throw out everybody, and they became the refugees. What you see the refugee crisis, that is where it is coming from. So they also have this bitter thing in their thing that we were thrown out, so we can never become pro-Israel. And Israel was also morally right back then because they established the state after so much fight. They wanted to have a land where they will not be persecuted all throughout the centuries. And in fact, whether it's Golda Meir, yes, Golda Meir only had said that perhaps, I'm just paraphrasing, she had said that now you can live freely here because it's your own state. And that was the feeling what Israel got when in 1948 it did happen. And they were betrayed by the Arabs who were living there. And then they got a reality check that whatsoever it may happen, they need to be shown a way out. Otherwise, it's going to be a perpetual problem for us. And they're saying that the wells were filled with the bacteria and on. There are a lot of issues, things about it which are surfacing that something had happened. But those were the ghostly war times. We don't know that everyone was, especially Israel, was fighting for its own survival because this very land grew from 25,000 to 70,000 to lakhs to they were very less in numbers. They were not somebody who were the majority or in fact they had any substantial number. They were always being butchered and killed. It was only the 1930s onwards when they began to pick up arms and say that okay, let's see the problem, let's hit it where it hurts, right? So it's even very tough to think that what the solution can be because the history gives you a very different picture. Everyone has got some bitter experiences, whether it's from the Israel side or the Palestine side. They both have some bitter experiences, and I'm admitting it after having dabbled through a lot of documents. It is there. But while there may be some politician in Israel who, for the sake of the modern worldview and the thing, may agree to the two-state solution, but it's not happening from Palestine for sure. It's not there up on the cards.
Yeah, I don't know what the freaking solution to it is. Like, I definitely don't feel, you know, that what Hamas says is a solution. And I completely sympathize with the point of view that Hamas needs to be eliminated for the Palestinians to have any future. Literally, for the Palestinians to have any future, Hamas needs to be eliminated, lock, stock, and barrel. I don't understand. Just like my view is very clear that the Pakistani army needs to be completely defanged for the Pakistanis to ever have a future. I
Yes.
believe that Pakistan has no future until the Pakistani army has. Now somebody might come back, अरे आर्मी चली गई तो पाकिस्तान ही टूट जाएगा. तो मैंने बोला वो मेरी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, मगर तुम लोगों को डेमोक्रेसी चाहिए कि मिलिट्री डिक्टेटरशिप चाहिए भाई, तुम आपस में नक्की कर लो. But definitely I don't see any um, future in this. But another bit in your book, right, that uh, I think the most heartbreaking bit of that book is chapter 9. That's just very disturbing. For those who don't know, it's Facing Annihilation, Jewish Resilience During the Summer of 1942. When you were researching what these barbarians did to the Jews, like what, how does one even handle that? Because when you read this entire, like, I know what the amount of reading one has to do to write a book. Like, मैं तो citations 300-400 से ज्यादा रखता नहीं हूँ मेरी बुक में. But yes, most of the times it's in my case is like when you read so many books and so many papers, it's just like it's there in the almari. You just have to take it out of the almari in your brain and bring it out. But people don't understand, when you read these accounts, the amount of impact it has on the individual psyche. So 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 when you were researching for this bit, like, how were you feeling about this entire thing? About, like, I want to know the human side of the impact it had on you, because when I was reading, I was like, बाप रे, क्या जंगली लोग हैं यार, क्या कर रहे थे ये लोग.
And as you rightly said, that I'm glad that you picked this chapter because most of the Indians may ignore it, but and because it may not give them a lot of thing for what they want to look for. But this is the most heartbreaking chapter because it's about the annihilation, and where you can literally see that. But coming to
भाई
the
मैं
point,
पंजाबी हूँ, भाग के आना पड़ा था मेरी
yes,
क्वार्टर फैमिली को.
yes,
मुझे मालूम है जब भाग के आना पड़ता है तो क्या बैंड बजती है.
yes, and imagine that. You are being made to stand in a queue and just shot point blank. Like there was one of the methods to do it, and you know that this is coming to you. Like there are a lot of things which I have not been able to put because of limitations, and also I had to take a lot of call that uh, how much filtered a book has to be. People may think it's very unfiltered, but there are a lot of things which I have not been able to put up, like a grandfather talking to his grandson who is about to become a father, that he's just consoling him because he is some 20-year-old boy, and he is mentally not very fit, and these are the things which I have found in the record. He's not very mentally fit, he's about to become a father, and he's consoling 20-year-old boy because his father, as in the grandfather's son, is gone, and he's consoling him that nothing will happen, you have to live long because, and he knows that in next 10 minutes everyone is going to be made to stand in a queue and shot point blank. So I'm just giving one example of what has happened. Now people look at the movie like Pianist or the Schindler List, they may get a bit of, because it's graphic, it goes into eyes, and then maybe you read much more to it. And I felt, and I was writing these chapters, I think around 3 years back, 3 years, two and a half years back or so, in 2023, and that was a period when I was almost done with Babar's book. It was done. It was in the publication, as in editing was going on. And while I'm dealing with the editorials and I'm dealing with the things like Skull Tower, small Skull Tower. Again, Skull Tower is not small, it's just two. But here I'm seeing thousands of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands, just so I can't express that what I was going through because it was very tough to get over with it because I had to get prepared to for the launch of my new book, Babar One, and I have to at the same time continue doing my job as an architect. And people don't feel the scale of the trauma which I was going through, but it indeed was trauma. It is not like 2 in the night you are researching and you find these kind of stories, and again you are set up in the day 9:30 to meet up a contractor of your site that hey everything, but it was not easy. I could see the effect on my work, and it was reflecting, though I never shared it with anybody, but it had taken a toll to me, and it was not easy to live with this document. It was very tough, it was very challenging, and it could relate me back to the era of the partition too, that what people would have gone through, because I have not read a lot of partition document. I've read about the Mopla because a lot of documents have not been declassified also. We don't know a lot of there are, but it was not heartbreaking. I would say that it was a lot more than that. It had broken me from inside for long.
The biggest problem why we have not gotten over, and this is my opinion about India in general, is we never let Indians, and especially the non-Muslim Indian, grieve. We never let them grieve. India has this culture. In Punjabi we have the word mitti pao, as in you just मिट्टी डाल दे यार, अरे मिट्टी पा, आगे बढ़, लाइक मूव ऑन यार, जो हो गया सो हो गया. सी, वो रिकंसिलिएशन का सबसे बड़ा प्रोसेस क्या होता है? ट्रूथ.
Yes,
Until the truth is shared, you cannot reconcile with the reality. इंडिया की ये सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम रही है. And I think the one thing where people often ask me, what can you learn from the Jews as a Hindu? I think they share the truth no matter what. How gory the truth is, वो बताएंगे, दिखाएंगे, और वो अपने
yes,
बच्चों को बताते हैं और अपने बच्चों को सिखाते हैं, विच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. तो जब बच्चों को, इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि तुम सारे मुसलमानों से नफरत करो. क्लियरली यहूदी सारे मुसलमानों से नफरत नहीं करते हैं. इजराइल की पॉपुलेशन डेमोग्राफी भी स्टडी कर लो, और
yes.
इजराइल के मुसलमान बहुत प्यार करते हैं इजराइल से. बहुत प्यार
Huh.
करते हैं इजराइल से.
They are the soldiers.
यस, तो ये जो ये प्रोपेगेंडा होता है, ये बकवास है. दे आर वेरी मच हैप्पी इन इजराइल. द पॉइंट इज, इंडिया की ये सबसे बड़ी गलती रही है. दैट इज was going to be my last segment of the book. What can India learn from this entire process? And I'm glad you've brought it up, because मैंने जब ये तुम्हारी बुक ये पढ़ी ना, मेरा सबसे बड़ा लेसन क्या था? देख, अभी कश्मीर फाइल्स आई, ठीक है, विवेक की मूवी. अब विवेक बंगाल फाइल्स लाया है.
Yes.
भाई ये 1960s में होना चाहिए था, 1950s में होना चाहिए था, 1970s में होना चाहिए था, 2025 में. और हमारी फॉर्मेटिव ईयर्स की इंटेलिजेंसिया, and you know how I came up with this conclusion is actually when I was researching for my second book. When I started, just one case, Rangila Rasool, just one case. Rangila Rasool has a history of how, and उसके बाद में त्रिपुर दमन सिंह की बुक, ये सब चीजें, Nehru's mindset. Nehru was like, मिट्टी पाओ यार, ऐदे ते भी मिट्टी पा दो, उत्थे भी मिट्टी पा दो, सारे आते मिट्टी पा दो. वो हर चीज दबा दी गई. अच्छा, कुछ हिस्ट्री में ये मत बताओ, हिस्ट्री में वो मत बताओ, ये मत दिखाओ, वो मत दिखाओ, हमको कुछ मालूम ही नहीं होता. और अभी आफ्टर 75 ईयर्स सडनली विवेक अग्निहोत्री पिक्चर बनाता है और लोगों की सटक जाती है, अबे तेरी जात का तूने ये किया, तूने वो किया. अबे उसने थोड़ी ना किया, वो तो तभी हुआ. वो क्या कर रहा है? वो तो आज इंडिया में रह रहा है, उसका क्या लेना देना है उससे. बट द पॉइंट इज, वी डोंट रियलाइज हाउ इंपॉर्टेंट इट इज टू एक्चुअली शेयर हिस्ट्री and the lessons you learn from history, and then you go, never again will we have another partition, never again will we allow someone to invade us, never again will we let a company like the East India Company do it. Which is why Trump expecting anything and everything is not possible, because you look at Trump as a new imperialist now. These kinds of triggers should be there. But We don't do that in India. We don't even have good history documentaries in India. And when we try to write it, I honestly believe even when we try to write the truth, I think it's written very shoddily by the so-called right wing of India also, because they write so much bullshit in it. There's so much bullshit peddled in the WhatsApp world of India. And somewhere the truth is uh, is the victim. We need to learn the art of storytelling, and we need to tell people that by just because I'm sharing a story from the past doesn't mean I need to take it out on the people in the present. Now I am a open opponent of Jati Varna. I call for its annihilation. It doesn't mean that because something was done in the past, I will take it out on the entire general category today, because they don't have to do with anything with that what has happened in the past. My my entire thing has always been that why have we this is not about the book. Why do you think we fail so miserably at talking about history without being discomforted?
It's one point which you brought has gone into my eyes too, that somehow we don't produce very good literature. And anyone to talk about a past needs some material to start with. That's what where your interest triggers, and it can be any medium. It can be film, it can be comic book, it can be anything necessarily which talks about the history. But somehow the books which come in front of us, they lack in a thorough research. They are very much dependent on op-eds. When I say op-eds, literally they are op-eds, and they become the citation material. And so it fills a lot of it fills the Indian intelligentsia with a lot of things which they should not have filled with, because they have very strong opinions, right? So when it comes to, say, the Timurid Empire also, there's a lot of the crap which goes in, because a lot of distortion was also done by Britishers, which, and we carried the legacy. And when the Indian authors pick, they find that something is exciting. A Britisher has written, oh, it's going to make Timurid look bad. Let's pick it. Let's not inquire whether it's appeared 200 years later or what. It goes into it. And when Indian diaspora, or the Indian people rather, Indian citizens go on to talk about the history, they at times will become the laughing stock if they don't go for a thorough research, because you can't use a 200-year later material to make a claim that Babar did this and that, right? Uh, and which is about the Ram Mandir also, which we will pick up when we discuss about the Babar 2. There's a Babar the Quest for Hindustan. And because there have been not much material, and Indians have always been made to feel good about the religious unity. And there is no harm in feeling good about religious unity. But the edifice or the foundation of unity was problematic. It was the rusted iron or the steel bars of the foundation. And that was to tell that nothing wrong happened in the past, as like you said, that mitti dalo or aage badho. And that is how the sanitized version of history came through, where when whether it is Discovery of India, the book by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and how the history was being written by, say, Professor Omila Thapar in her book on Somnath, where she brought in fanciful stories, and they are no more than WhatsApp forwards, where she claims that Al Manat. So people thought that Somnath, Ghazni thought that the Gauris thought that this Somnath altar is of the almanat, which was to be carried away, which the few people carried away, as Muhammad could not destroy it, and in that confusion, he went ahead to destroy it. He never had any intention against the Hindus. So that kind of fanciful stories have been the part and parlance of the thing. And when you see the great films like the Tipu Sultan, the soul of the Tipu Sultan, where Tipu Sultan is made a grand hero, or say it's the Mughal Azam. It's a great film in terms of filmography, everything. So the
गाने
image
बड़े
was
अच्छे थे यार.
The songs are beautiful. I will say the film was also good. The way everything was made, I like the transition. The suddenly it becomes color and it's monochromatic, and suddenly it's good. But then people begin to see Jahangir as Dilip Kumar, right? They and that becomes their image to that empire which existed right before the British, which was relatively good. You can We have never made a film where we have made the British Empire look as good as we have done with the Timurids or the Mughals, but their taxation was even worse. They almost sucked the blood of the people. Their taxation system was horrible. It was one of the worst. So these kind of sanitization of the history, the way they made it Shuddho and Ashuddho, that created a lot of problem, and we became reluctant to talk about our past. We talk about our past, but we don't talk which matters.
Yeah, but
Yes,
that's the thing, right? And you know, when these my the left's ghor pap has been their inability to talk about history comfortably, because and in India both sides deal with this problem. They deal with negationism and exaggeration at the same time. They negate the flaws of their past, which does not suit their politics, and then they exaggerate the things about their past which were actually non-existent.
yes,
Both sides deal with this. I'll give examples of both sides. The left-wing negationism is the record of Islamism in India. The right-wing negationism is the problem of caste in India. Everything is British. सब कुछ अंग्रेजों ने किया नहीं, हम तो है ना झुनझुना बजा रहे थे, मस्त में पेड़ के नीचे बैठे थे, कुंबाया, सब कुछ था, हम तो कुछ करते ही नहीं थे, हमारी औरतें एकदम फ्री थी। उसके पहले हमारे हमारे यहाँ पे यू नो कुछ जातियों के साथ कुछ नहीं होता था, बस ऐसे ही चलता था। और फिर दूसरा ये है एग्जैजरेशन, एग्जैजरेशन अबाउट हमारे एंसेस्टर्स के सारे आंसर थे अपेरेंटली, इतने आंसर थे कि गाड़ी नहीं बना पाए, इतने आंसर थे हमारे एंसेस्टर के पास। और लेफ्ट का क्या मालूम है, अरे मुगलों ने ही तो हमको बनाया। आपको पता है उसके पहले इंडियंस को पॉटी करनी भी नहीं आती थी, वो मुंह से हकते थे। फिर मुगल आए, बोले नहीं नीचे भी छेद है, उधर से भी हक सकते हो तुम, आओ इधर से हकना सिखाए तुमको। तो ये प्रॉब्लम है इंडिया की। आप अपनी साइड पिक करते हो, आप उसको या तो सुपरलेटिव बताते हो या सुपर गंदा बताते हो। मे बी दे हैड ऑल शेड्स, मे बी दे हैड ऑल
yes,
शेड्स, मे बी जैसे तुमने बाबर के फर्स्ट पार्ट में बताया, बाबर में बुरे भी थे, अच्छे भी अंश थे, अकबर में भी
yes,
बुरे थे, अच्छे भी थे। भाई बात करो, प्रॉब्लम क्या
yes,
है, मिर्ची क्यों लगती है? ये हम
yes.
कभी कब इससे बाहर निकलेंगे?
And that this sanitization from both the ends with their point of view, because सबको अपनी तरह की सफाई चाहिए, so that has led the history to become a laughing stock. Because see, the point I'm trying to assure when I write the book is that if anyone, my book can be used by a left wing, my book can be used by a right wing, both as a punching bag material, both as a source material. So what I mean to largely say is that my book has not come with the biases for anybody or any political stand. What it is doing is it is just putting the fact as it is. It's not about the comfort or discomfort of somebody, but what it gives you more legitimacy to. Because if you, how can you imagine somebody to not have any good character? It's impossible that even if there's a villain, of course he would. It's not coming with the concept that I'm trying to see an innocent boy in Burhan Wani because he was a headmaster's son and whatnot. But larger picture here is that when you deal with the biography, even when you will deal with the biography of say Burhan Wani, he's the antagonist, but still if you will deal with it, this will come that whose son he was. It will exist there. But his act, like a murder, is enough to make you appear that one of the worst person and you face the penalty. There is no point whether you did thousands of charities before doing a murder is done, and you will face the penalty for it whatsoever it may come as by the law. Likewise, if Babar may have done thousands of good things, which he was a good family man, which I still vouch for, and he was a very good poet. He had interest in literature unlike many of his successors. But it does not mean that he can become a hero in our land for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, it does not mean that I will have to whitewash his anything, any part, whether it's good or bad. I will bring it all as a biography. Contextually, he will surely become a bad person from the Indian point of view because the kind of menace he did in a short span. Same applies with every ruler. Akbar's rule comes with a bit of nuances. He has got a good rule, he has got a bad rule. He was a very smart, skewed politician, as I always say. He was a very skewed politician. And he knew that how to make his things done. He had some very bad laws, no doubt about it. But he was surely a good politician. He was not driven by, at least in later phase of his life, he was not driven by this that I have to establish Islam, because even Islam was not treating, or the people of Islam were not treating him well. So he thought of finding a new religion, Din Ilahi. So he was a smart boy among all of them. And we need to take that account, or that kind of perspective toward the history writing.
Yeah, I don't know what's the, it's always going to be, everybody will find something or the other. I often use Ambedkar as the perfect example. Like Ambedkar, I think is one, you don't have to agree with everything Ambedkar said. But Ambedkar was, unique. He was an equal opportunity offender based on his rationality and his ways of thinking. It's not like Ambedkar spared
Yes,
Islam in his book, The Idea of Pakistan. He's very critical.
yes,
Ambedkar had a lived reality being a
yes,
Mahar in Maharashtra, and
yes,
he never spared Hinduism. So the Indian left will only quote Ambedkar on Hinduism, and the Indian right will only quote Ambedkar on Islam.
yes. And so Ambedkar was a very, like any politician of any time, he was also a smart politician, and
Yeah,
he was doing his politics as how it may look like. Today, we may keep quoting Ambedkar for convenience because he said the things about Hinduism too, he said the things about Islam, he said about the communists too. At times, he praised communism in the early days, later on, he bashed communism. So, he gave the heart attacks to everybody when it came to.
same with Bhagat Singh,
Yes, yeah, that's so true. And
same with
yes,
A.R.
all of
Savarkar.
them.
Everyone, you name the person.
Yes,
Same with Gandhi. Gandhi
yes,
has the highest number of quotes.
yes. That's very right. That's very true. And that makes so the point is that the choosing of a hero and villain can lie with the context and the time and the people whom we are talking about. But the history cannot be about heroes and the villains. History is an account of the time. It's just about the time, that what exactly is happening. We are just recording the actions. We're just recording the things which is happening around in that era. It is, history is not being written to make one realize that who is hero and the villain. It is the byproduct, right? It is very much of a byproduct. So like for example, even if what I am writing about Hitler today, that he had a praise for Islam, and if today also in a lot of Hamas hideouts we find the symbol of hook and cruise or the Hitler's symbol there, it's not mere coincidence. They certainly see him as a hero. So Hitler is surely hero for some bits of the people who surely are not the good bunch of people. But again, these contexts are coming here. The context is that he is becoming hero for the bad people. But when I took the account of Hitler related to the Palestine and Israel, I was not trying to make a evil out of this man. I have just put across an account. Like, for example, when he's praising Islam, forget if somebody does not know anything about Hitler, he just knows that, okay, just read that Hitler said it in 1940s. Some person is not knowing anything about Hitler, he will feel that perhaps he's a good guy who is praising Islam, or if he's a Muslim, right? If a Muslim
भाई
is reading
हिटलर
it,
वेजिटेरियन था.
yes, Hitler was a vegetarian. It does not mean that in the parlance of today, when this the vegetarianism is pushed as a virtue. So what do we call about Hitler? The people, in fact, someone was saying that Akbar was a vegetarian also. So all these things don't really matter that much, because these are the acts and the actions based on the personal preferences, which happens even today. Someone may be vegetarian, but maybe one of the most evil guy you have ever met. And maybe very pro-Hindu also, but his acts and actions would be horrendous even towards Hinduism, because his facade would be that I am very pro-Hindu. But so all these are very personal preferences, and personal preferences should not be the the right judgment of who that person is. It really
अरे
doesn't
अरे
matter.
ये छोड़ अभी तो सी इमेजिन द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ ड्राइंग अ पर्सनालिटी पोर्ट्रेट ऑफ अ पर्सन बेस्ड ऑन लिमिटेड राइटिंग ऑफ दैट पर्सन फ्रॉम द पास्ट आई एम नॉट सेइंग इट इज नॉट to be done or should not be done before somebody misunderstands me. I'm
Yes.
saying how hard is it? Now
Yes.
imagine doing that to someone in the present, in the social media age. तो कोई अगर मेरे सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट के बेस पे आज से 300 साल बाद मेरी पर्सनालिटी का अगर प्रोटोटाइप निकालेगा तो बोलेगा ये आदमी सब लोगों को कुशल मेहरा एट आईसीआईसीआई पे पैसा बहुत बोलता था देने को, इसको लगता है बहुत फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस होगी, ये सबसे पैसा मांगते रहता था. You're trying to understand what I'm saying. I know it sounds ridiculous, मगर अगर कोई 300 साल बाद मेरे पोस्ट को एनालाइज करेगा, सबसे ज्यादा मैंने कुशल मेहरा एट आईसीआईसीआई डाला हुआ है और सब लोग मुझे 1 रुपया दे रहे हैं, तो लोग उसका क्या मीनिंग निकालेंगे 300 साल बाद? This must be a very bad time in India. You see the potential problems with this.
I get it. I hear you. What you are saying. Yes, yes, that's very true. And that cannot be a parameter to make a case for somebody. That surely is not. And that's why history is nuanced. Had it been so easy, then perhaps a few courts would have defined history. But even to see the life of Babur, I had to use around 800, 900 odd pages, including both the books. So it's, though he lived a short span of life. So history is uh, very complex, and somehow, and that's the reason why in India the history books are not very thick. So you will see a lot of book on, maybe the novels would be thicker, but the history books are. So I have seen the history book, like you brought, when you brought the Nastika, it is a the commentary on the idea of Nastikvad or Nirishwarvad, or rather Nastikvad. Not that is a different thing. So it was a commentary. Despite that, it has got substantial material. Trust me, I have seen the history books being wrapped up in 150 pages, and I have seen the most definitive biography of Akbar being written in 400 pages. I was wondering that how the hell on earth can someone do the most definitive biography of Akbar in 450 pages? While Akbar is the most illustrious in terms of everything, right? So somehow history is just seen as a tool to engage for a lot of people, that there's a common consciousness that people like to talk about history, so maybe that is a good clickbait too, and maybe that's what sells. That's a point, that history ka kuch, like somebody had said on X recently, that the moment they see that breaking news wala post, they feel that it's a clickbait and something like that. So yeah, perhaps history has become one like that, as how breaking news or did you know, the if a post start within Twitter, as history has become one like that. And but we really need more serious work on history. Vikram Sampath is doing fantastic job when it comes to history writing, and uh, Tripur Dhawan is a fantastic history book writer.
Brilliant.
Is
Tripur is
amazing.
brilliant.
Is
And see,
amazing.
what I like
And
about both Tripur and Vikram is they don't give their commentary in the book. They just say, yeah,
yes,
yeah, 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 yeah. खत्म.
yes,
अब तुम अपना कंक्लूजन ड्रॉ करो बंदे के बारे में, तुमको जो करना है अपना सर मार लो दीवार पे जाके.
yes, yes,
Like in 16 Stormy Days on the First Amendment, the story of the First Amendment of India, Tripur Daman Singh nowhere adds his point of view.
yes,
Nowhere in the entire freaking book has he added his point of view.
yes,
He has just shared the entire history of what happened, क्या debates में क्या बोल रहे थे. और
yes.
ये लो बुक अभी पढ़ो, और तुमको नेहरू की पूजा करनी है पूजा कर लो, गाली देनी है गाली दे दो, दोनों करना है दोनों कर लो.
Yeah, that's so true, and that I've read that book, and that's one of the best books I have read for in that for that era. And of course, it's a unique subject. Not much has been done on that subject, so I thoroughly enjoyed that book. Maybe if there are some other titles, but this is the only one I know so far, and I just loved it. The writing is amazing. The nothing to say about content because content is indeed the hero there. But yes, writing is fabulous, and that's the way we should write a history book.
Okay, before we wrap up, I will now start reading your Babar Part 2. अभी ये हो गया तो अब मैं Babar Part 2 पढ़ना शुरू करूंगा. But after this, like, are you going to dabble more in this subject on this entire, historical Israel-Palestine thing, or you're now looking to do the modern day uh, rendition of this, running into it? Because see, you stop at a point in history, right? You just take a historical look at this. So, are you doing a follow up on it?
Not as of now. I wanted to do something because this book starts with the end of a world war, basically the
Yeah,
fall of the Ottoman Empire,
yeah.
and that's so I wanted to cover something on fall of the Ottoman Empire's consequence on the Malabar, because the Mopla also happened after the fall of the Ottomans. So that's the whole genesis. So I wanted to do one good book, objective book on that, and I'm looking for the history of Sufism thoroughly. It will be a long done book. It will take a lot of time, but I'm working on Sufism. Rather, I will change the track a bit, and of course, the Mughal series will continue as it is. And I'm not looking to do much on Israel as of now, but maybe after 5 years or so, who knows? I will like to document a bit about Hamas and maybe that October 7 can become a thing to look about. I don't know. Maybe that it can, because this jumped as a subject out of a sudden. I had never thought that I will do this book. Like 6 years
Hmm.
back, I was completely unsure. Forget unsure. I never thought of it. I knew nothing about it. But just 5 years have changed the thing.
Yeah, fair enough. No, but it was a very, very good book. I really enjoyed reading it, Abbas, and I wish you all the best. I hope everybody reads this and tries to understand that. Um, there is a historical point of view to this entire subject, and yes, there is a Jewish point of view, there is a Palestinian point of view. You can be on any side, but if you read his book and find the historical flaws in his book, that's all I can say. So best of luck, Abbas.
Thank you.
Right, guys, the link to buy the book, the Amazon link, is there in the description of the podcast. Click it right now, buy his book. Also follow him on X. As far as I'm concerned, you know the deal. The Cārvāka podcast only runs on monthly memberships and one-time donations, two-time donations, 20-time donations. Jo karna hai karo. All the links to that is in the description of this podcast. So keep supporting the Cārvāka podcast like you always do. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste. Take care.